An algebraic expression is a mixture of variables and constants that are being added, subtracted, multiplied, and/or divided. Expressions, unlike equations, do not contain equal signs. Some examples of expressions include 3x plus 6. In this expression, we're multiplying 3 by a value x and then adding 6. Another example is y minus 8. In this expression, we're taking a number y and subtracting 8 from it. We also have 2g minus 5. In this expression, we're multiplying 2 by a number and subtracting 5 from that. We can read, write, and evaluate algebraic expressions. The first thing we can do is read algebraic expressions. So if I look at my first example, it says x plus 8. Well, x represents a number, and although we don't know what that number is, we can read this expression as a number plus 8. We can also say 8 more than a number, or the sum of a number and 8. Our next expression says y minus 10. Again, y represents a number that we don't know, so I would read this as a number minus 10. We can also say 10 less than a number or 10 fewer than a number. And we can say the difference between a number and 10. Next, we have 3a. When you see a number next to a variable with no symbol, that always means that you are multiplying the number by the variable. So in this problem, I would be multiplying 3 by the number a. I could say 3 times a number for this, or I could say something like triple a number because multiplying by 3 is the same as tripling a number. I might also say the product of 3 and a number. Finally, we have h divided by 4. For this, I would say a number divided by 4. Or I could say 4 into a number, or the quotient of a number and 4. In these examples, I have more than one operation. So my first example says 2x minus 5. This means that I'm multiplying 2 times x and then subtracting 5. So there are many different ways that I could say this. I can say 5 less than 2 times a number. I could say twice a number minus 5. I could even look at this as being a difference because I noticed that overall this is a subtraction problem. So I could say the difference between 2 times a number and 5. Next, I have 9d plus 8. This means 9 times d plus 8. So some different ways that I could say that would be 9 times a number plus 8. I could also say 8 more than 9 times a number, or 8 more than the product of 9 and a number. I could also say the sum of 9 times a number and 8. Finally, I have h over 2 plus 6. H over 2 means h divided by 2, and then I would be adding 6. So I could say half a number plus 6. In this case, I can use half because dividing by 2 means that I am taking half of a number. I could also say 6 more than a number divided by 2. I could also look at this as being a sum, so I could say the sum of a number divided by 2 and 6. To write algebraic expressions, I need to find the key words or phrases. So my first problem here says the product of 3 and a number. Well, I know that product is the answer to a multiplication problem. So if I'm finding the product, then I'm multiplying, and it looks like I'm multiplying 3 by a number. So to write this, I would write 3x. That means 3 times a number x. And I use a variable to represent a number because I don't know what that number is. Next, I have the sum of 12 and a number. Sum always means to add. So in this case, I'm adding 12 and a number. So I would write 12 plus x, again because x represents a number. Next, I have the quotient of a number and 9. Quotient always means divide, so I can write x divided by 9, or I can write this as a fraction. So I could also write x over 9, which still means x divided by 9. I have the difference between 10 and a number. Difference means subtract, so I would be subtracting 10 and a number, which I'm going to use x for. Next, I have 5 less than 3 times a number. If I look at this one, I notice that there's actually more than one key word or phrase. So I have a less than, and then I have times. I'm going to start with the first thing that I see here, which is less than. Less than always means that I'm going to subtract. So the easiest thing to do is go ahead and write my subtraction symbol. If I am taking 5 less than something, then that means I have something to start with over here and I'm subtracting 5 from it. So whenever you see something less than, that number actually goes to the right of your subtraction sign. And then what it's less than is 3 times a number. Now I don't know what this number is, so I'm going to use a variable to represent it. So 3 times a number x. So the algebraic expression that represents this is 3x minus 5. Next, I have 8 greater than the product of 4 and a number. So I'm going to start with my keywords, which I have greater than, and then I have product. So greater than always means that I'm adding. So I'm going to go ahead and put my adding sign. If I say 8 greater than, then that means I have something that I'm adding 8 to. Then if I look at the next part, I'm adding 8 to the product of 4 and a number. Well, product means multiply, so I'm adding it to 4 times a number. So to show 4 times a number, I would write 4x. This means 4 times the number x plus 8. Next, I have the difference between 7 times a number and 6. When I see difference, I know that this means subtract, so I'm going to put my subtraction sign. When I see difference, I know that it's always going to be in the order that it's given to me in the words. So this says 7 times a number, that means that's going to come first. So to write 7 times a number, I would write 7x. And then we see the word and. That splits up our subtraction sign and it tells us what's being subtracted. So 6 is being subtracted by 7 times a number. Next, I have the sum of a number divided by 12 and 14. So I start with sum. Sum means to add. And now I need to figure out what I'm adding. It looks like the first thing I'm adding is a number divided by 12. So to show a number divided by 12, I would take a number, which I'm going to use x to represent, and I'm going to divide it by 12 by putting it in a fraction. This says a number divided by 12. And because I'm finding the sum of this and 14, 14 is going to come next. Finally, we can evaluate algebraic expressions. To evaluate algebraic expressions, we are going to substitute given values for the variables in the expression. This problem says 9 plus a, but I know that a is equal to 7. So I would replace or substitute a with 7. So instead of writing 9 plus a, I would write 9 plus 7, and then I would solve. And 9 plus 7 gives me 16. Next, I have 2b. Well, 2b means 2 times b, but I know that b is equal to 5.5 because it tells me that up here. So I would multiply 5.5 times 2, and that would give me 11. Next, I have c divided by 3. Well, I'm going to substitute 9.3 N for C, so I would write 9.3 divided by 3. And when I divide 9.3 by 3, I get 3.1. So that would be my simplified expression. I can also evaluate algebraic expressions with more than just one variable. So I can plug in all the variables that I need to an expression and then solve. And when I solve, I always need to make sure I use the order of operations. So this first problem says x plus y minus z. Well, I'm going to replace x with 12.4, and then plus y, well, I'm going to replace y with 8, and then minus z. So I'm going to replace z with 3.6. Well, I have only adding and subtracting here, so I know that I would need to add or subtract from left to right. So I would add 12.4 plus 8, which would give me 20.4. And next, I would subtract 3.6 from that. So now I would do 20.4 minus 3.6, which would give me 16.8. Next, I have 2y minus x. 2y means 2 times y, so I'm going to do 2 times, and I know that y is 8. And then I'm going to subtract x from that, and I know that x is 12.4. The order of operations tells me I would multiply before I subtract, so I would do 2 times 8 first, which is 16. And next, I would subtract 12.4 from 16. So when I do 16 minus 12.4, I get 3.6. Finally, I have 3z plus y minus x. 3z means 3 times z, so I would do 3 times 3.6. Then I would add y, and I know that the value of y is 8. And then I would subtract x, and the value of x is 12.4. Now I would follow the order of operations, which would tell me to multiply first. So I would do 3 times 3.6 first, which would give me 10.8. Then I would add 8 and subtract 12.4. So the next thing I should do is add or subtract from left to right. So I'll add 10.8 plus 8. That will give me 18.8. And now all I need to do is subtract 12.4 from 18.8. When I subtract, I get 6.4.